Fear does not exist in this podcast.
Yes, Sensei.
Yes, I'll let you off. Could have done with a bit more gusto, but we'll go with it.
Bit more. Okay.
Right, so welcome to Seismic Cinema. So we believe in the power of escapism, and we also believe in promoting independent artists, including podcasters, which we've got on tonight. It could be film directors, it could be authors that we've had on in the past as well. And you can find us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, not X, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And you can also listen to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all those other locations. Recent podcast we've done as part of our Sport in September is the 90s classic Space Jam, the 2000s classic Dodgeball, and now we're on to a classic from the 80s. And I'm joined by Dan from Casting Views Podcast. So thank you for coming on, Dan.
Thank you for having me on. Yeah, looking forward to this.
Good stuff. So before we get into the Miyagi verse, I thought I'd give you a wee chance just to give your podcast a shout out, tell everyone all about it.
Cheers, thank you. So yeah, I'm Dan from Casting Views. So the podcast it's a general topic one, so it literally can be anything and everything each week. It's a kind of a bit of a fun look at topics I've covered recently. I've actually just started season 4, so we've kicked off that season with bizarre lawsuits. I've done robots and AI and gambling and gaming. So yeah, it's just trying to have a bit of fun with various guests each week. Currently also doing something that's slightly new for the podcast. I'm doing a little bonus mini series of reviewing Black Mirror episodes, but trying to do it more reviewing the episode, but also just trying to have a look at the core themes or tech that's involved in it, and seeing if we can apply it to everyday life, or what if it was to everyday life. So yeah, just trying to have a bit of fun each week, like yourselves with friends.
I don't think fun and Black Mirror go in the same sentence.
Yeah, you have to really look for it. You have to really look hard for it.
It's enjoyable, enjoyable in a weird way.
Yeah, it's I hadn't seen it for a few years, so coming back to it sort of fairly fresh. But it was always, I think I said on the first episode, I was kind of dreading the first episode. The Prime Minister national anthem. That was the one I was dreading coming back to. Yeah,
we kind of skirted about that when we did our ranking episode.
yeah, it's a difficult one.
It wasn't actually the first episode I saw. I was mentioned to you earlier that I liked San Junipero. It was actually a friend that introduced me to that one. So that was the first episode I saw. And then I think I watched the national anthem, but then I think I stopped there. This was years ago. And then a couple of years ago, I decided I'll give it another shot. And then I watched it all and got really into it.
But I do like to have guests on regularly, so I guess we can expect to see Seismic Cinema on there now at some point in the near future.
If you'll have us, that'd be great.
Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, so how do you? It's quite a mixed bag of content you got there. So how do you decide each week what to go for, or is it just totally random?
It's random, but with a bit of order. So what I've done is I won't turn the camera around, but I've got a whiteboard up on the wall here, and it is just scribbling ideas down. It might be on the drive to work. Something might come to me. I might be listening to a TV. It might be something the wife says.
Yeah.
It might be something I overhear at work. I do get people suggest ideas, so other podcasters. So I'm always up for that. Um, the hard part is taking an idea and trying to map it into an episode, something that's going to be fairly enjoyable. So I've got a lot of random words up on that board. And now I'm just trying to figure out, how's that going to come across as something that people want to listen to?
Yeah, I saw your lawsuits one promoted, so I'll need to check out some of your non Black Mirror episodes as well.
Definitely, it's a real eclectic mixer. Yeah, haven't done anything mega serious, but I'm looking to maybe dabble with some that are a little bit more on the informative side. I mean, I did do one. I did a double episode on gambling, and there's only you can't really. That's not a subject you really can find a lot of fun in, but kind of delved into some of the aspects, like the casinos in Vegas, etc. So yeah,
Mm.
it is a mixed bag, and it does keep you on your toes. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're also involved in a football podcast as well.
Yes, I am. Yeah. So that started just a few. Well, I think, well, say a few weeks ago. I think we're on episode 20 now. But yeah, it's just football with a couple of friends of mine, Dan, another Dan, and Dave. Yeah, we do a weekly episode where
Dan, and Dave.
Dan, that's 3D. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, we just I think we decided that, yeah, we enjoy talking about football. We are talking about football. I know there's a lot of football podcasts out there, but we wanted to just have a bit of fun with it, get away from the whole trolling and fan baiting that you see on a lot of football accounts, etc.
So you're
So
not
yeah, we just
you're
have a
not
bit of fun.
you're not talking about Harry Maguire then.
We have spoken about Harry Maguire. No, I mean that's a news story. He is a news story. Um, but the interesting thing is, two of us are Tottenham fans, and the other's an Arsenal fan. So I say, if we can get
Are
along,
you
every
are you the Tottenham fan then?
yeah, I'm one of the two Dans are the Tottenham
Well,
fans.
your manager is my team's rival's ex-manager.
Oh, okay, yeah, he's a great manager at the moment. Anyway,
He's doing
yeah,
well, yeah.
yeah, no,
Cool. Well,
he's I do like. So just on him, I think actually as a manager, I think he's been a breath of fresh air to the Premier League as well, just in terms of
yeah.
his
Even
straightforwardness.
though he was on the rival team, like I always quite liked him. He always seemed like quite a nice guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh well, I need to make sure I check out some of your football episodes as well. So we could have a double crossover because we're hoping to start doing a once a month football episode as well. So there's plenty of opportunities there.
Yeah, definitely. We do have guests on that as well, sort of talking about their teams. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, at the moment we've not had a Rangers fan on there yet. So,
Well, I'm a Rangers fan and Paul's a Morton fan, and we went on Project Football um, podcast, and we're talking about like our kind of dream 11s and games we wish we'd been involved in, that kind of thing.
yeah. Well, there you go. We'll sort something out. We'll get the paperwork signed after.
Sounds good. So yeah, if you haven't already guessed by the gi that I've borrowed and the background of the karate dojo, we are going to be looking at Karate Kid from 1984. But before we get right into that, we just want to talk all things Miyagi verse. So, Dan, what's your background with the franchise? Like, which movies have you seen? Have you seen Cobra Kai? When did you first watch them? All that kind of stuff.
So I've seen all the original films. I also saw, was it the next Karate Kid? They tried to kind of kickstart it again, didn't they? A few years after Part Three.
Was that the
Or in,
Jaden? Was that the Jaden
no,
Smith one,
it was
or was that the other one?
yeah. Who was it? I've forgotten her name now. But yeah, it was
Uh,
yeah. Next Karate Kid '94. Hilary Swank. That was it. And I think they
mm.
tried the one off. It didn't pick up. So and yeah, I've seen Cobra Kai, and I really enjoyed it. I've got quite a soft spot for that series. But originally seeing it, I can't remember. I don't think I saw the first film at the cinema. I mean, well, I think I would have been 7. Um, I think it was one of those things would have been on a somebody in the family would have had it on VHS. There would have been a copy flying around, and saw that. But I definitely remember seeing the second film at the cinema. Me and a cousin going to see Karate Kid Part 2 at the cinema.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, and I just think, for me, I just think they're great films. And they are so 80s now. I mean, I rewatched it again recently, and they are so 80s it hurts, and that's why I love it as well. It's a proper step back in time.
Well, we'll be coming at this from slightly different perspectives. I was born in 1991, so
Oh, you
uh,
young'un.
I didn't get the opportunity to see it in the cinema, unfortunately. But I've read all about it. I actually read Ralph Macchio's book recently.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
That it's only came out within the last year or two. So that gave a lot of great background into him getting the part in the film and the process, etc.
Yes, it'll be
Definitely worth
interesting
a
to find out.
definitely worth a read if you've interested.
Yeah, I'll try and check that out. But I was gonna say then definitely interested then to see your view of seeing it all those years
Mm.
later and how you
Well,
felt.
I've got a bit of a weird experience with this franchise. I only watched Karate Kid for the first time a couple of years ago. I'd always heard of it, and I'd heard it referenced quite a lot in How I Met Your Mother, which is one of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
Which actually has quite an important part in Cobra Kai's creation, which we can get to. Um, so yeah, I watched the first film and I absolutely loved it, and I think I've probably watched it 10 to 15 times in the last couple of years. I've probably
Wow.
this year alone I've watched it 2 or 3 times. Um, I haven't actually watched any of the other films. I've watched like for 40 minutes maybe of the second one, but you know how sometimes it's just life just doesn't give you
Yeah,
time to watch
yeah.
all the things you want to watch. So I've not actually watched any of the other films, but I have watched all of Cobra Kai and absolutely loved it. But the thing about Cobra Kai is you'll know there's so many flashbacks that if I was to watch 2 and 3 now, I'd know most of the characters and most of the plot lines.
Yeah, I really enjoy Cobra Kai, and but I do think they do have far too many flashbacks, and I almost think after the second season, they probably should have tried to stand on their own a little bit more
Mm,
as its own entity now. But yeah, I would say it's definitely. I think it's definitely worth if you can watch the other two films,
yeah,
but the first one is the best. The first one, I think, for me,
I
head and
do.
shoulders. Yeah.
I do plan to watch them. I might try and check the second one out this weekend if I have the opportunity. So I've got a couple of. We're going to come up with a better name because Paul's decided he doesn't like it. Seismic statements. So we've just got a
Yeah.
few fun facts about the film, Dan. So have you got any trivia or little facts about this movie that you want to share?
The one I found that actually I was quite stunned with was the famous song for it, "You're the Best," wasn't actually intended for Karate Kid, it was intended for Rocky 4, which
I
came
think
out at
I
the same
saw.
time.
I
That
think I saw. I think I saw that somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they chose not to, and it was then replaced oh, no, sorry, it was gonna be used in Rocky 3, that's right, and then they replaced it with Eye of the Tiger, so it's not like they picked a bad one in the end anyway, but
Aye.
yeah, I couldn't imagine now, um, not having that song in that montage,
Aye.
that training sequence.
It's brilliant. It's funny though the tournament's only the last kind of 15 to 20 minutes of the film. It's always feels like
Yeah,
it's longer than that, doesn't it?
yeah, 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 and it's yeah, it's actually quite an interesting film in that sense, and there'll be a couple of points that come on to, I guess, around my summing of it, but yeah, and I think the other thing was they were looking at weren't they looking at Sean Penn, I think, for the lead role at
And
one point again.
Charlie Sheen was almost cast as Daniel as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to say when you look at it now and say, "Oh, no, it would never have worked," because obviously I've grown up for, 40 years, with Ralph Macchio being my Karate Kid, but yeah, it's hard to see how any of them
Mm.
could be. Um,
It was just fated, wasn't it?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
in his book, he for a while resented the character because he was getting kind of typecasted. But as like he moved into the Cobra Kai era, he's really starting to really like um, be grateful for everything that the characters brought him.
yeah, I think so. I mean, I do sometimes get when, like, a band will say, "Oh, I'm fed up of playing that song," or an
Mhm.
actor will typecast, but you've been part of one of the seminal films of the '80s, and
Mm.
yeah, it's got 5 or 6 series currently now of a new show, so yeah,
Yeah,
like you said, embrace it.
definitely. So, any more fun facts you want to share?
What else? Did I have anything else?
No,
Um,
no pressure. Just in case you do.
the other one I did have was that and again it was only when I was digging in is where is it? I've got it here. Wasn't the, one of the Cobra Kai was it Steve McQueen's son? I think I
I'm
have
not
it.
sure.
Yeah, Dutch, is was played by Chad McQueen, son of legendary actor Steve McQueen, which again kind of blew my
Right.
mind because it's not that, they make a play on it, but it was just again one of those little links that I'd not seen before.
Little little Easter eggs.
Yeah, yeah.
So a couple of wee things I picked out. So Ralph Macchio was given the yellow car from the film. I'm not a car guy, so I don't know what the car is called, but he still owns it to this day. He was given it by one
It's
of the producers.
it's not a bad gift, is it?
That's pretty cool. Run a bit on that. Second one was the idea for the film came when one of the producers back in 1983 heard about a teen that was being bullied, who then became a martial artist and got his own back. So that was where the kind of inspiration for the film came from. This one's really fun. I don't know if you know this, but Ralph Macchio's called his son Daniel.
Oh, yes, yeah, which I think is brilliant as well.
What was the other one? Pat Morita. Is that the right pronunciation?
I believe so, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. He wasn't They originally didn't want him to audition for the role because he had a big reputation as a comedic actor. So they didn't think he would be able to pull off the role.
Which is funny, isn't it? Because he does have comedic elements in it, so I do wonder
Mm,
if they adjusted it for that, but yeah, it's not like it's a mega serious film, is it?
yeah. But I think, yeah, maybe they just thought he wouldn't get the right vibe. And the last one, I thought this was just quite interesting from a filmmaking standpoint, is that Ralph Macchio's in every single scene of the film, which you don't really see that very often. So apparently he's in every single scene.
I'll have to rewatch that now. That is quite impressive actually, isn't it? Yeah.
This is all from IMDb. I'm not taking the credit for these facts, but I at least took the time to look at.
Absolutely, and share.
Yeah, that's how people learn things, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's the end of the seismic statement. So it means we can just get right into the review. We keep the reviews quite loose on seismic cinema. We just talk about what we like, what we didn't like, we Easter eggs, themes we noticed, just anything really. So, do you want to start, Dan? What are some of your favorite or least favorite memorable parts of this film?
No, I'm gonna start with probably for me slightly, out of the main film itself is the kind of the soundtrack when you go back to it, especially having grown up in that time. So, especially we mentioned "You're the Best." You've got, Bananarama's "Cruel Summer," and I think whenever I watch those films and that soundtrack, those particularly those songs kick in, it's kinda goosebumps and sends me
Mm,
right back, and again, I think they fit the film. Again, easy to say after all this time, but they fit the film so well, especially Cruel Summer plays up just after they've moved cross country, and I think they're on the beach and they're introducing to everyone, so it's
yeah,
that introduces kind of like his bullying element, going to school, so I think it's a clever use of song as well as
I heard
being
a
an awesome song.
I heard a fun fact about the start this morning. You know when there's loads of kids chasing the car saying goodbye to him?
Yeah, yeah.
Apparently, they were just kids from the neighborhood that kept pestering him during filming, and they only agreed to leave them alone if they let them be in a scene.
Brilliant, there you go, that's if you see a camera crew round
Yeah.
your way.
It's quite cool though that the mum is also, because they got so many actors back into Cobra Kai, but the mum was in Cobra Kai quite a bit as well.
Yeah, 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 and yeah, and I think, obviously, soundtrack aside, I mean, it's for me, it's a perfect recipe, especially for family film. You've got the good guys, so you've got Mr. Miyagi, Daniel, Ali, and his mum.
It
Um,
depends on your point of view though. There's a lot of theories that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Zabka was the real hero.
Well, yeah, yeah. We'll probably come on to that, but yeah, but you've all right purported. purported good guys. You've got the so-called bad guys, Cobra Kai, who are, especially in there with Kreese, really are the almost like cartoon villain element almost. You've got the bully aspect, you've got the friendship blossoming between an apprentice and a master, and then you've got a training montage, which every 80s film I think had to have. Um, and yeah, kind of like so good overcoming evil. So it's just it's like a perfectly packaged film, I think.
Sounds a bit like Star Wars as well.
Oh, yeah, well, you could probably apply that
The
recipe to
hero's
a lot of films.
the hero's journey is what they call it. Um,
Yeah, yes, yeah, yeah.
just just a random question. I've got my answer. If it's probably quite an obvious one. Do you prefer Karate Kid or the original Rocky?
I'm gonna say Rocky.
Oh, you've
I'm a
just ruined
huge
it.
Rocky. No, no, I know. No, that's another series. If you do, have you done Rocky? Because if you haven't,
We haven't done any Rocky. We've done a Creed. We reviewed Creed 2, I think it was, or no, Creed 1, or Creed 1 and 2. Can't remember.
I think as a kid, it was definitely Karate Kid because that's who kind of that's the audience it was aimed for. It was, and I defy anyone, especially of my age, who says they didn't try to do that crane kick in their garden or against their mate. They're lying. I tell you,
I've,
everyone up and
I've,
down the country
I've
has done
tried it. I've tried it twice today already.
it. I've failed miserably every time, but yeah, but I think as I got older, I think, yeah, I kind of
Yeah.
gravitated more towards the Rocky.
Fair enough. I've watched. I think I watched both of them for the first time in quite quick succession. I've been on a bit of a journey. It's a big part of this podcast is me watching films I should have seen. But yeah, I enjoyed Rocky, but I did prefer Karate Kid. It's the one I always go back to, the one I kind of relate to a bit more. Um, but that's just me. Um, you're talking about the music.
Yeah.
You talked about um, You're the Best. I'll Raise You, Young Hearts by Commuter.
Yeah, yeah,
So that was actually my wife and my stepson, we all like or love Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, and
yeah.
even my younger stepkids, they love the song. They sing away to it because we had it on in the car quite a lot. We actually chose it as one of the 5 songs for our not yet received wedding video. So
Really? Okay.
Young Hearts is going to be in our wedding video.
Superb. Yeah, it's definitely like I said, I think soundtracks obviously add so much to a film. Um, and yeah, I think when they work best is when they kind of slot into a film and it just really accompanies it and you just feel it as part of the film rather than being a song they're playing over that particular scene. And for me, that's
It's
what I felt with
uh,
this.
it's the ultimate kind of driving cruising song. It comes back in Cobra Kai season 1 as well when Johnny Lawrence is driving.
That's right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, so really enjoy that song. So something I enjoyed, it's got to be, well, we'll answer one of my 3 questions and then we can have the discussion off the back of that. My favorite character is Mr. Miyagi. Have you got a favorite?
Yeah, I think it's him. I think he is he's kind of like the soul of that film, isn't he?
Did you ever get a bonsai tree?
You know what? I did, yes. I did. Oh
I don't have a
god, yeah, I
bonsai
did.
tree, but I'm a big fan of Hot Fuzz. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
I had a Japanese peace lily for quite a few years.
Oh, really? Yeah, no, I had a bonsai tree, and I loved that. I loved that thing, right? Until once we went on holiday, and I had a relative who was coming to look the house after the house and didn't look after the tree, and basically it died. It was a summer. It was a cruel summer, literally, and the tree the tree died.
That's really sad.
Wasn't happy. Yeah, there you go. That took a twist. Things escalated quickly there, did
Things got out of hand fast. So yeah, just everything about him, like. Obviously, it's a bit questionable that he beat up all the young kids. But
Yeah,
one of my favorite scenes from rewatching, I rewatched it last night, was when they're pretending he can't speak English when they're trying to get into the
yes,
tournament because they need
yes,
they need to pretend that she's the translator, and
yeah,
they have the whole interchange, and at the end it just goes welcome, and it just walks
yeah,
on.
yeah.
uh,
Because then, and he understands because I can't remember, yeah, how that interchange goes, but, um, he says, "Thank you," and he goes, "Yeah," and she says something, and Mr. Miyagi obviously understands it even though she spoke in English, not Japanese, and yeah,
uh,
he turns around and says, "Welcome," and just walks off. Brilliant,
he
brilliant
is
scene.
he is really funny, and like when he's just shouting bonsai, when
Yes,
Daniel takes
yeah,
the
yeah,
car away, he's like bonsai.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that he had and that's what I was saying earlier about the fact that they didn't want him because of his comedic background. He actually does have quite a few funny scenes and lines in that, if I remember right, and,
Yeah.
plays it perfectly, yeah.
So there's so many iconic scenes in this movie. So like the one where Daniel's just kind of in shadow and he's kind of practicing the crane kick on the rock, and
Yeah.
I think one of the best scenes possibly in movie history, to be honest, is the culmination of the training. So when he's doing all the yard work and the painting, and he's starting to get quite frustrated with it all. What's your views on that?
Yeah, I think that's really well done, that whole, him making him paint the fence or varnish the fence
Mm.
and sanding the floor and waxing, wax on, wax off the car, and he's getting frustrated with him, and it then sort of links back because there's a scene where Danny is practicing his karate after a run-in with the bullies, and he's got a book open, hasn't he? And yeah, Mr. Miyagi comes in and says, "You can't learn karate from a book," and it
Mm.
kind of all these little, life lessons, and for me, the whole training thing. Have I don't think you have. Then have you seen Rocky 4?
I've not seen Rocky 4. I've seen Rocky 1 and Creed 1 and 2. That's my Rockyverse experience at the
What's that?
moment.
Well, I liken it to Rocky 4, which it isn't too much of a spoiler, but, where in Rocky 4, you've got Rocky does all the manual training, like he's running up mountains, he's chopping logs, he's doing the pull-ups,
Mhm.
where his opponent is high tech, it's all high tech gym equipment, injecting him with stuff. And again, you've got the comparison here where, yeah, Danny is learning in a back garden, essentially, and on the beach with Mr. Miyagi, whereas you've got,
Yeah,
Cobra Kai is this tough dojo, the crisp outfits and the mean and regimented training, and it kind of,
yeah.
for me, I drew that parallel with that film.
It's those two philosophies as well. You see that a lot in Cobra Kai with the Miyagi teachings versus the Cobra Kai teachings. Um, it's just see when you've seen the film, when you're watching him paint the fence, you're seeing the moves just in your mind's eye. But the first time you watch that film, you're probably sharing Daniel's frustration. Like, what's the point of
Yeah,
this?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's just
But
it's
but
quite. Um, sorry, on you go.
so I was gonna say, I do love that scene then when he's getting angry at him, and then Mr. Miyagi then tells him, he goes, sort of paint the fence, and he's doing the actions, and then Miyagi's going to attack him,
Mhm.
and he's showing that what he has taught him is actually,
Yeah,
very sound sound advice in the confines of this film, of course. Um, but yeah, I think that's the perfect, yeah, because you need that friction, don't you, between like we said the apprentice and the master. Otherwise, it's just everyone's just too good friends, right?
yeah. It's a really emotional film as well. I would say it's the scene where he gives Daniel the car for his birthday, but
Yeah.
he gives him a present before that as well. What was it? Is it the outfit?
yeah, the birthday present. Because then, yeah,
And
he goes, "I've got something else for you," and Danny goes, "No, you've given me enough already." And he goes, "Well, take a car." It's just a brilliant scene. Yeah,
no, he said something like, "You upset old man" or something like that. When he didn't take it, but it was what Daniel said, probably the most emotional line in the film, where he's like, "You're the best friend I ever had," that kind of thing.
yeah. It
Um, and
and
then Miyagi says, "You're," it's like, "You're okay," or "You're not so bad." He says something like that. "You're not so bad yourself," or something like that.
yeah, and this is what I was gonna say for me. Not a criticism of the film, because I'm not here to criticize the film because I love it. But
You can
when
criticize
you
it if
look
you
at
want.
it now, no. When you look at it through the jaded eyes of, whatever age I am, you see what they tried to do. So they did try to put some things in there, like they they really skirted around racism. They skirted around classism between him and his girlfriend, Ali's family. But yeah, they don't really go into it. And like you said, I think the emotional core of it, I would have liked to have seen, yeah, that a bit more, because you've also got the fact that his mum, his mum's trying to uproot them across country, and he's being a bit, obviously he's a kid, and you kind of don't get that element of what she's doing to give up her life
Mm,
to make sure she's looking after him. And like you said, it's about these adults that are kind of really looking out for him. And yeah, kind of really guiding him along. And like I said, there is that emotional core, which I think nowadays they'd probably really expand upon. But there, you're just getting a glimpse into it. You're
yeah.
getting these little snippets of it, and I think that's quite effective.
I don't know if I just don't think that's what this film was meant to be. I think it was always meant to be just a light-hearted action flick. But Cobra Kai does, to its credit, it does go, as you said, a lot deeper with a lot of the themes and like how the characters are feeling and the consequences of the actions over the years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, oh, I was going to say something, but it's escaped me now. It was a good one. It was a good one as well. Oh, it really does hit home though, the relationship, because Ralph Macchio and Pat became. I sound like he's my pal. Um, they became really good friends, and I think the last time they saw each other in real life was when Pat was getting some kind of acting award at an event. It was mentioned in the book I was reading, and Ralph Macchio did read the kind of eulogy at Pat's funeral as well. So knowing all that, it really
yeah, yeah,
amplifies the emotion of the scene, I would say.
yeah. And as you said, as a fan watching the film, it does make you feel a bit more for those scenes, doesn't it? Especially the scene where they weren't actually going to film it at first, but I think Pat campaigned or demanded it be in the scene where he's drunk and recounting what happened to his wife. Which again, I think if you take that out, I think it's the only bit of, well, it's the main bit of the film which gives him any backstory and kind of understand almost then why he's really being like a mentor to Danny, I guess,
Yeah.
because he doesn't have the family of his own.
The way I was going to say that was the way I hadn't really thought of that part this morning, but obviously it wasn't just his wife that died; it was his
Mm.
infant child. So Daniel was really the kid he never had, I suppose, as well,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
which adds an extra layer, not just the friendship, but the kind of father son dynamic.
yeah. I think
I
the
wrote
other
down. Sorry, on you go.
go on. No, no, go for it.
No, I just wrote down a couple of quotes that I thought were quite funny. You were talking about
Yeah,
what his mum gave up for him. I wrote down a quote. It just says, "Neither does palm trees, ma." Like it was like I think it was like whatever they were talking about couldn't fix their problems, and he's like, "Nah, neither can
yeah,
palm trees."
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, Another quote I wrote was, it's a quite an iconic one. It was, "You couldn't leave well enough alone."
yeah,
It comes
yeah,
up during the fight. It comes up during the fight scene.
yeah. And I think that kind of is very true of what you were saying earlier about people's view on Danny. Is he a good guy or not? Because,
I was,
he I think he was just getting revenge a lot of the time, that's all.
he was very likable, but Johnny Lawrence is like one of my favorite TV characters of all time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but you don't really get a lot from him in this movie, do you? He just kind of skills. The biggest part he has is when he's asked to sweep the leg and he looks really kind of upset and doesn't want to do it. That's the only real view you get to what he's maybe like really like.
Well, that's what I was gonna say previously, that him and, you have to forgive me, I can't remember the name, but there's the other guy who they make injure Danny in the early round, both really apologetic. Remember, he does that kick on his knee, and then he's going, I'm sorry, Danny, I'm sorry," and that's what I liked as well, because again, it shows that, it doesn't make them the out and out villains, and it shows that they are kind of, I'm not gonna say necessarily in fear of Kreese, but there's that fear that they have to do what they're told, even if it goes against their better judgment. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, um, Johnny does the sweep the leg, which he's not happy about, and then the way the film ends as well. And actually, yeah, that was a kind of, I guess, another fun fact, because it finishes quite abruptly, doesn't it? And what I subsequently learned is that the start of the second film was due to be filmed the ending of the first film. They never
Because
did it.
I've seen the start of the second one because it basically happens straight after the fight, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But But what I was gonna say was, yeah, as soon as the fight's over, Johnny gets that trophy and gives it to Danny, like, he's there's no hard feelings.
Mm.
It's like, "Yeah, we've put it all out there. You're the champion."
Yeah.
And so yeah,
So
there's those layers that, again, you don't kinda see, but are coming out, I guess, in Cobra Kai.
so maybe there were obviously sowing seeds even back then that Johnny Lawrence had these redeeming qualities.
Yeah, 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 and he's brilliant in Cobra Kai. He's
Oh,
hilarious.
he's
Yeah,
so funny, isn't he's so funny, isn't he?
yeah, yeah.
I'm definitely going to rewatch it, whether it's after it's all out or in the lead up to the final season, whenever that comes out. Um, yeah. So I'm just trying to think. Do you ever just when you're doing you don't maybe do movie discussions as much as we do, but maybe during your Black Mirror, you think of things when people are talking, and then
Yeah.
it just goes out
Yeah.
your head,
All the
and you move
time,
on.
all the time.
Yeah. So we're talking about earlier about the fight, the kind of competition just being like the last 15 minutes. It still just strikes me as really bizarre. Like it feels like it's a lot more happens there than the time allowed.
Yeah, and it's sorry, you brought it up first. I do liken it again to Rocky, in that I call the first one a boxing film, but without much boxing,
Hmm.
because it is mainly about the hero's journey, as you said. Um, yeah, and maybe that's what makes a tournament all that more iconic, because you've waited, what, sort of 80 odd minutes to get to that
Mm.
point, and because it is the proper climax of the film, it ends there. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe that helps to make it more iconic, rather than a long drawn out
yeah.
30-minute sequence.
And I suppose, and you do care quite deeply about Daniel and the different characters. So yeah, it does build that. What I remembered what I was going to say now. It was the whole idea of Daniel. Is he a good guy? Is he not a good guy? It was the because his what's her name? I always forget her name. The love interest,
Elizabeth Shue, Ali.
Ali. Yeah. So Ali's friends are quite cold towards Daniel, which on first watching you might think her friends are just horrible, but Daniel did get the wrong end of the stick quite a lot. Like when he goes to the party and
Yeah.
Ali's with Johnny, but he doesn't quite see what actually happens. He is quite brash and quite. He doesn't really take no for an answer from her. He just kind of like barges his way through, and yeah, don't know. What did you make of his kind of pursuit of Ali?
He is frustrating as well at times. I guess, yeah, but again, is that just proper 80s, trying to build those confrontations up, as in between him and Johnny. I mean, yeah, that scene at that party where he then ends up covered in spaghetti, doesn't he? And that then makes him a laughing stock, which makes him even worse, or
Mhm.
it worsens the situation of what he went for. I don't know. I think the whole love story, love triangle was kinda hurried in it because again, it's not an overly long film, so I think they do
Mhm.
just skip a few story beats just to
Yeah,
and maybe that makes it a bit more ham-fisted, in appearance than it could have been.
yeah. Another iconic scene talking about Ali is the Halloween party, not just
Yeah, yeah.
the skeleton outfits, but the shower outfit.
I think that's superb. Yeah,
It's quite
I
a
think
good
that's
idea
superb.
though. See if he was wanting to get Ali for like a quick chat, like having the shower curtain definitely helped.
Yeah. Oh, and apparently I think I did see very briefly that that is foreshadowed in an earlier scene with Miyagi. That costume or something very much like it's hanging up on a wall. So I need to go back and see that.
Okay, no, I didn't
So
notice that.
is but yeah, I just think if when I think about, yeah, Karate Kid, there are a couple of scenes and yeah, the
Mm.
shower curtain and yeah, the skeleton outfits on the bikes, the cycling scene, yeah.
They must have been very popular Halloween outfits in the 80s.
Yeah, yeah,
This was proper big though. This film wasn't it? It was like
yeah,
huge when it
yeah,
came out
it it was massive, and that's what I'm saying, you know, even as a kid, yeah, you were kinda watching it and you were quoting the lines and yeah, you were doing the crane kicks. It was, yeah,
because
it was everywhere.
in his book, Ralph Macchio was watching it in like a cinema just with fans, just regular cinema goers. And then he said as soon as he got outside the cinema, people were just going up to him, like calling him the Karate Kid, calling him a hero, and all that kind of stuff.
I think also what's benefited him is he looks the same age now than I think when he was in the film. So I think, you know, it
I
helps
think he was
not
meant to
having
be. I think he was 22 when he filmed it,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which
And he's a
doesn't.
school kid, right?
Yeah, he talks a lot in the book about his kind of baby face and
Yeah,
like the kind of scar on his face in his career for his appearance in terms of his age.
yeah. But, yeah, I can imagine it hasn't helped maybe he can't get certain roles, but as fans, it helps not seeing the Karate Kid turn into the karate geriatric, I guess. Yeah, it's
That's true.
it
Yeah,
lives in your
he
mind,
still
yeah.
looks good in Cobra Kai. Do you know the whole origin story of the Cobra Kai show and how it links into How I Met Your Mother and different things like that?
No, I mean, I know they discuss it and they appear, don't they? They appear in one of the episodes.
So Barney Stinson's the character is a massive Karate Kid fan, and he always talks about it. But he always talked about the fact that Johnny was the actual Karate Kid, and he was like the hero. But
Yeah,
then William Zabka appears in How I Met Your Mother. Like, one of the seasons, he's like a recurring guest. The season where there's a big wedding on, he's in it quite a lot. He actually becomes Barney's best man at some point. But Ralph Macchio is also in an episode, but it was actually appearing in How I Met Your Mother that kind of created the concept for Cobra Kai of Johnny being the good guy, and it kind of tipped Ralph Macchio from not being interested in reprising the character to really seeing the potential in the show and the storyline. So it's funny how one of my favorite sitcoms, How I Met Your Mother, led to another one of my favorite sitcoms, Cobra Kai, in an indirect way.
I just that's what fascinates me about a lot of programs is sometimes how they or films are based on a throwaway sentence someone has said
Hmm.
or just something random that's happened elsewhere. I love that sort of stuff. And
Well,
like I said, look at it, it's 5 seasons on.
it's doing well. I'm contractually obliged to make at least one Star Wars comment per episode. So you talked about throwaway lines. The movie Rogue One literally came from one sentence in the opening crawl for A New Hope.
What was
uh,
that?
uh, about the rebel spies stealing the Death Star plans. It was that
Oh, of course, yeah, yeah, yeah,
one
yeah.
of the members of Lucasfilm went to the head of Disney and said, "I want to make a film about this," and it was just that kind of one line from the movie, not even a line from the opening crawl.
Yeah. Well, like you said, this was from a Karate Kid was from a story that, the creators saw in the news about a kid being
Mm.
bullied and becoming a karate expert. Yeah, it's a genesis of ideas that often, yeah, I fall down the rabbit hole of finding out how programs were created. Yeah, um,
Yeah,
I
it
did
can be
see.
a lot.
Well, I was going to say I did see. I think talk about William Zabka, and I'm glad he's getting, a lot of love in this new series because I did see him at one of the Comic Cons. I haven't been to a Comic Con for a few years now, but I didn't. I didn't actually sort of go for his because he was doing autographs and selfies. But I did see him there, and he seemed like he was having a lot of fun, and seems like a nice guy.
Yeah, there's lots of clips on YouTube of the cast together, just having a laugh and talking about the show. They're worth a watch as well. Um, do you have a favorite quote from the film? That was my final question. So the first one was character. Did you say Miyagi as well?
Yeah, yeah.
Song. Mine was Young Hearts. Was yours? What would
I
yours have
think.
been?
Yeah, it's a real tie between the 2 I mentioned, but I'm gonna go for, "You're the best." I think that's just,
Nice.
very motivational.
So yeah, so that was the last question. Was do you have a favorite quote? There's so many quotes in the film, but was there anything that stood out?
Yeah, do you know what? It is, you've said it. It is, funny, "Sweep the leg," that's always stayed with me. I don't and, because again, because it is and it's funny because it's a Cobra Kai, it's a Johnny Lawrence, centered quote rather than it
Hmm.
being anything on Mr. Miyagi or Danny.
It's funny. One of the most iconic lines. I always get it slightly wrong, but the general gist of it was, "Get him a body bag," and like it became it so iconic.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
was just that's not my favorite line, but that was just a throwaway line. My favorite one is the whole bit about having balance when doing karate, but also having balance. So it was whole life have balance was what the quote was. I really like that. That's something I try and live by is having a good balance between work and home life as well.
See, and now I look back, so I've gone for the violent one where basically it's trying to injure the hero, so that makes me look
I
bad.
might I might be wearing the Cobra Kai gi, but I would probably be
Yeah.
Miyagi Do.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, by the way, yeah. Um, I did wanna say, sorry, the only other thing I did laugh at through this film, and I think for me, the only negative part of the film is any time they played football on screen. It's probably the
Oh, I was
worst
going to
bit past
mention
me.
that. Because our friend from the Project Football podcast actually messaged us about that on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's weird how like into football they are for the
Yeah.
80s in America.
Yeah, it was odd. It was odd. I don't know if it was, it's just a fun game that they can play at school, as a sport,
Hmm.
but, yeah, I just found it funny. There was one scene and this is how sad I am, but, yeah, I noticed, I think it was it on the beach one? Well, they just let him run right past them all. Nobody put a tackle in. Like, get a challenge in.
Because there's like when you see these like American movies, like in American Pie, they're always playing like lacrosse and things like that.
Yeah,
It was just it
yeah,
was strange. It was something I noticed that they were really into. Like football's becoming bigger in America now,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I don't think it was in the 80s because that was they did the World Cup in '94, but that was
yeah,
before
yeah.
then, 10 years before then. So
You had a couple of scenes, didn't you? You had them playing it on the beach, then at school, wasn't it?
at
So
school, yeah,
then
and there's
that's right, yeah, he gets sent off, doesn't he? He gets sent away off the pitch.
the fight that erupts. Is there
Yeah.
anything you don't like about the film? Was there any kind of negatives to it for you?
No, I think, like I said, I think it would have been, but you're just stretching the film out then. But I would have liked to have seen a bit more with him and Miyagi. I think I would have just liked to have seen a bit more of it. That kind of like you said, that almost like that father son relationship, because you see the little elements, because it's obviously it's painfully clear that Danny's mother is a single mother. he's got the bike that's damaged, but then Mr. Miyagi fixes it for him, after he's been run off the road by,
Yeah.
them. And yeah, he takes him under his wing to, teaches him the life lessons, the balance. And I think it would have just been nice a little bit more, find out a bit more about, yeah, Mr. Miyagi and yeah, see that relationship grow. But then I guess, you're just adding a bit more to the film.
Suppose that happens in the later films and into Cobra Kai as well. I suppose you do get more of that kinda
Yeah,
back-end
yeah,
story.
yeah.
Um, do you think is there any arguments for it being a wee bit slow in the kinda middle at times?
See, I've heard
Or
that, and I don't think so. I don't think so.
I love the film, so the fact it is a wee bit slow, but I think that works well for building the characters. But I think for people who aren't that into it or don't like click with it as much, maybe they could find it a wee bit slow in the middle.
Possibly, and I do think that scene with the scene I mentioned with the drunk scene, maybe that feels like it interrupts the flow, but I guess it depends what you want from the film. I mean, some people probably want karate match every 10 minutes, and you're not gonna get that with this film. Like we said, the tournament is at the end.
I just fell in love with the film and it was like love at first sight, really. Because like at the end of watching it for the first time, I was in. I live with my wife now, but before we lived together, I was doing like the crane kick in her living room and things like that.
So I was gonna ask you then, because obviously you saw it a lot later.
Mhm.
How do you feel or how do you feel watching it? Because it's great to hear that, obviously you love it. I mean, it's dated in terms of the fashion and obviously the cars, but do you think it stood the test of time even now if you showed.
Yeah, I think it's timeless. Like I was talking to one of my pupils at school today, and they love it, and they quoted a line from the film as well. That's like a 16-year-old. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I think it does. I think it's got that hero's journey. It's got as you said, good versus evil. It's got all the kind of traditional tropes that films have, but it's got a lot of heart. It's got a great soundtrack. I think it does. Like I wasn't alive in the 80s, but it made me wish I had been. I think it just kind of captured that feel, the music, the clothes, that kind of thing.
yeah. Yeah, it's very much of its time, but like I said, I think it has stood the test of time compared to potentially
Mhm.
some other films.
Yeah, I think it's pretty timeless. Right, so we're on to that moment where we give our seismic stars. So, what would you give this out of 10?
Well, 10, it's I'm probably not when I review film, I do it with my heart rather than the head, so it's gonna be up there. I think I'm gonna give it an 8. I'll give it
So where did its two
I think
points go? Is
well,
it the
you
lack
see,
of?
this is the I think this is where I'm looking at it now as the age I'm at and probably after all these years, but I think, yeah, I think I probably would have liked just um, a bit more of the interaction, a bit more of the relationship between him and Mr. Miyagi. I think there's that, and I think also I would have liked to have seen a bit more about yeah, a bit more about Johnny, like you said, and I guess that's what Cobra Kai's given us, right? But I think the film in itself, if I took it in its instance, I think looking at it now, if you'd have asked like 8-year-old me when I watched it, I'll probably give it 11 out of 10. But yeah, right now, I think just because of yeah, if I'm judging it purely on as a film now, I just would have liked a bit more yeah exposition on some of those bits.
I'm letting my heart rule my head. I'm giving it a 10.
There you go.
It's
Wow, there you go. Well,
it's
yeah,
just it's just so fun. Like it's just one of those films that I could I could rewatch it as many times without getting sick of it. It always puts a kind of smile on your face. You get those emotional moments as well, and I think just Cobra Kai is just totally enriched that as well. And
yeah.
yeah, I do definitely
Well,
need to go and watch the other ones as well. But nah, I don't think it's got any. I know you said about they could have been a bit deeper with the themes, but
That's just really
I
picking, though.
just
I am really picking. Yeah.
I just don't think that was probably the intention at that stage. Um, they just
No,
wanted
not
to
at that
create
stage, yeah.
a fun like, I'd love to have seen that in the cinema. That's one I would love to have
Yeah,
seen in the
yeah.
cinema,
Yeah,
just for
I
that
I think you
experience.
I think you said it all. Stick it on, you're guaranteed 90 minutes of entertainment.
Mm.
That's what it is. I don't For me, I don't think there is
Not
a
2 not 2 hours.
oh, well, oh, sorry, yeah, it's about I think it's an hour
Because
40, is it?
I had it in my head no, it's like 2 hours and 5 minutes, I think.
Was it? Well, there you go. That shows how good
Because
it is. It's
I watched it on Amazon Prime, last night, and I quite often like to know where I'm at in a film if I'm tired or whatever. So it was, 2 hours and well, obviously credits, so it's probably about 2 hours.
there you go. Well, that's how good it is. Maybe I
Yeah,
should up it to a 9 then. There you go. It's so good you don't
yeah,
realise how long it is.
definitely. Right, I'm just gonna give a couple of shout outs to some people that got back to us, before we finish up. So this was a Project Football podcast, and they said they rewatched Karate Kid last night and haven't seen Cobra Kai. It makes sense with some of the references, such as when the picture of Kreese from when he was in the army in the Cobra Kai dojo. I didn't realize that was there. Um, he said also impressed that the sport that we're playing at school was football rather than the typical
Yeah.
American sport.
Yeah.
And he replied to me again and says, one other thing I noticed the bit where Miyagi tells Daniel to look up when he bows is similar to a scene slash line from Enter the Dragon.
Okay.
And he's going to watch Karate Kid 2 tomorrow night or tonight. A few people got back to us on the kind of main Twitter post. The Grey's Taproom podcast, who we had on for a review of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, said forever classic, one of the best movies of all time. I agree with you. And Podalicious78, which is one of the dudes from What's the Script podcast, said very much a movie of our time and one I grew up loving. With the resurge in Cobra Kai, I'm all in. Always hated Crease, lol. I like they actually wrote lol. And Post Apocalyptic Show said, saw it in the theatre when I was 11, loved it then and love it now. Watch it about once or twice a year. Something about it just works from the first to the last frame, of which they didn't say this, but of which Daniel's in every single one. The way the screen's lighting up my face there, it looks like I was telling a ghost story.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just a couple. So make sure you check out the podcast of the people that commented. So that was Gray's Taproom podcast, What's the Script, Post Apocalyptic Show, and Project Football podcast.
Really good comments on all of those. I mean, it is really good to see so much love for that film.
Definitely. And we also want to give just a wee bit of love at the end of this podcast to Casting Views, and it's been great having you on, Dan.
No, thank you. Yeah, no, I loved it. It's any excuse to talk about an 80s film, absolutely.
It's funny because we actually go back quite a way. Like prior to when I got in right into the nitty gritty of the wedding prep, I'd put out to try and get as many people as possible to come on the podcast, and I had a big list, and I had movies they wanted to see, and then I just got absolutely swamped with wedding prep, and I just couldn't get my head into it. So since then, we've managed to have a few people on, including yourself. So it's good to from that original conversation. So thanks for reaching out.
Thank you. And I'm loving the sporting theme because you are picking it's really random films or random sports forums. So that's
Yeah.
brilliant.
So we've had basketball with Space Jam, we've had
Yeah.
dodgeball with dodgeball, and
Yeah.
then we've had karate. So it's been quite a good fun.
Yeah. No, but again, thank you for having me on. It's brilliant.
Um, End the podcast. You want to give a final wee shout out to your podcast? You didn't actually mention where people can check you out. I don't think.
Yeah, yeah, just pretty much everywhere. I think I'm on all the podcast platforms. If I'm not on the one you listen to, let me know. But it's yeah, just search for Casting Views on the platforms, and against I'm pretty much on all social media. I'm more active on X or well, Twitter or X, whatever we call it, and Instagram. But yeah, search for Casting Views on that. And also, yeah, if you search for Just Football. I think it's at Just Football Pod on Twitter, and yeah, Just Football on socials as well. If you're that way inclined.
Sounds good. So yeah, next week, we are going to record our first Seismic Soccer episode. So looking to getting into that. And then we'll need to decide what we're doing next month. So we're keen to do another theme. We quite like doing a themed month. So if anyone has any suggestions, particularly we like alliteration. So something October, then give us a shout. And just a reminder, you can find Seismic Cinema on Facebook, Twitter, I'll repeat, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And you can also check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Pods, and all of the other podcast stations. And that's really us. So yeah, Dan, thanks again for coming on. If you
Yes,
stay on
thank
the
you.
line once I end the podcast, I'll still be about for a few minutes. So yeah, thanks for coming on, and we believe in the power of escapism, and hope Dan's enjoyed escaping
Definitely.
reality for an hour.
Definitely.